Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Today, we're continuing our ongoing coverage of the war between the Russian Federation and the North Atlantic Treaty Organization and its Ukrainian proxy forces. Now, we continue to hear reports of North Korean troops being sent into the Russian Federation. We anticipate that these forces have been or will be deployed within the vicinity of the Kursk Oblast to assist Russian forces in ongoing military operations against Ukrainian forces that have crossed into the Kursk region. Now the question is what military units have the North Koreans sent into the Russian Federation? Now first, you have to understand the North Korean military is monolithic. It is an incredibly large force. It consists of roughly 1.2 million plus troops. It is broken down. Those forces, obviously, the largest component is the Korean People's Army Ground Force. You also have the Korean People's Navy, the Korean People's Army Air Force, the Korean People's Army Strategic Force. You have the North Korean Missile General Bureau that has the essentially the strategic rocket forces. And then finally, another significant component of the North Korean military is the Korean People's Special Operations Force. And I just pulled up their unit insignia so you, the viewer, can see exactly what I'm talking about. This is a separate force from the actual Korean People's Ground Forces. The North Korean Ground Forces consist of about 900 plus thousand troops, subdivided into infantry and armored brigades and corps. Approximately 5,000 main battle tanks, tens of thousands of pieces of artillery, and again, an incredibly large force. The other component of the North Korean military is this: the North Korean People's Army Special Operations Force. We believe that this force numbers anywhere from 40,000 to 200,000 troops. Again, it is a very much a classified organization, but nonetheless a very large organization that is then subdivided into a multitude of various subunits, namely light infantry brigades and or reconnaissance brigades and sniper brigades. Very little information exists about the breakdown of this North Korean military unit, which is a component of the overall North Korean military. We believe that elements of this special operations force, again separate from the actual North Korean army or ground forces, these are the units that have been deployed to the Russian Federation. We believe right now there are approximately 3 to 4 North Korean Special Operations brigades that are made up of these sniper or reconnaissance brigades that have been forward deployed into the Kursk region. These 3 to 4 brigades number about 10 to 12,000 troops. These are probably some of the highest trained military units in the North Korean military. These are some of the best equipped, very highly motivated, and all of them are volunteers. They are not conscripts. Okay? So a fairly potent force that the North Koreans have sent to assist Russian forces in this ongoing conflict. Now, the question is why? Do the Russians really need these reconnaissance or light infantry brigades from the North Korean Special Forces Command to assist them? Probably not. Most likely, this deployment by the North Korean military is actually helping the North Korean military. Look, the North Korean ground forces, the special operations forces, its commando units have very little experience in terms of direct real-world applications. Okay, they have been used sparingly in Africa. They have been used sparingly in the 1973 Yom Kippur War. A few dozen advisors were sent to various Middle East nation states during the wars with Israel, and that's essentially it. So this is hands down the largest deployment of North Korean forces that will probably engage in some very high intensity combat since the onset of the Korean War back in the 1950s. So again, this is really designed to test the skill set and enhance the skill sets of these North Korean special operations brigades that have been forward deployed towards Ukrainian forces. So we'll have to wait and see. Eventually, we do suspect that these brigades, if not all of these brigades of about 10 to 12,000 troops, will probably become involved in direct combat with Ukrainian forces. And you also can't rule out the possibility of even further deployments by the North Korean military into the Russian Federation to help assist the Russians in this ongoing war effort. Look, the Russians are not just engaging the Ukrainians. There are a wide range of Western contract forces, mercenaries, whatever you want to call them, that are assisting the Ukrainian military. Not only that, you have the direct assistance by the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency. You have Western European nation-state intelligence agencies that are active in this ongoing war. You have the special operations forces of a number of nations directly involved in this conflict, assisting Ukrainian forces as well. So obviously a huge struggle in terms of the nation states that are involved in this conflict, and given the nature of the relationship right now that exists between the Russian Federation, the North Koreans, the Chinese, the Iranians, the Venezuelans, again, this is not outside the realm of what we believe would eventually happen. This conflict is going to continue to escalate. The Russians are going to continue to fight this conflict until ultimate victory. Look, the Russians, if you go back and you look at history, and you look at discussions around the Ukraine, specifically the Ukraine, the Russian thought process is simply as this: we care more about this issue than you do. And if you look at the history of the Ukraine, you look at the history of World War II, World War I, just the history of Russia in general, okay? The Ukraine, the borderlands, is a region that the Russians cannot ignore. They are simply not going to allow the North Atlantic Treaty Organization and Western neoliberal powers to simply annex the Ukraine, the borderlands. They're not going to allow it. It is not going to happen. This war will continue, especially now, given what has happened over the course of the last 2.5 years. Right now, there is just simply no way the Russians are going to lose this conflict. And the conflict is escalating, hence the deployment of 10,000 North Korean troops into this conflict. I've talked about this before. We will continue to see escalation. We will probably see eventually Chinese intervention, possibly in some ways, maybe not on the scale that we're seeing the North Koreans involved, but I got to tell you, the Chinese are very much interested in this conflict and how this war is being fought. It is the new way of war, especially in terms of drones and intelligence And then obviously the North Koreans are trying to gain skill sets by participating in this conflict. Now, we'll have to wait and see. We anticipate a fairly robust North Korean military activity that will take place in Kursk against Ukrainian forces. As we speak, we're continuing to see the Russian offensive continuing in the Donbass. The Donbass offensive continues full steam ahead. Let's go back a few days and just kind of look what has indeed happened. Again, going back in time, we'll go back to the 20th, essentially, of October. And then we'll fast forward, scrolling just a little bit. So this offensive continues and will continue. And again, I have to say that, as I have reported before, the Russian war aim back in 2022, in all probability, was very much different than what the Russian war aim is currently. I think because of the way this conflict has evolved, especially with the participation of the West and some of the rhetoric that we have seen in the West regarding the Ukrainians and regarding the absolute idea that the Ukraine will become part of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, that the Russians are rethinking even the status of any part of a free and fully autonomous Ukrainian state post-conflict. I have to wonder and believe that that is being very much closely analyzed as we speak. So again, what is the Russian war goal currently? Difficult to say, but ultimately they are going to continue until full-on victory. Why? Again, the Ukraine means more to Russia than the Ukraine means to the West. No matter the cost, the benefit outweighs the cost for the Russians. And that's very important to understand. It is just the opposite for the West and the United States. The cost outweighs the benefit. You have to understand that. And if you don't, you will not understand this conflict and where this endgame will take us. That's it for today. As always, thank you for joining us. Have a good day.